And we're recording. Awesome. How you doing?
Hey.
It's awesome having you on the podcast. Thanks for taking the time to come on. So before we kind of get started, tell me a little bit about your backgrounds, how you got interested in blockchain and in the space in general, so we can give the audience an idea of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Uri Klarman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of bloXroute Labs. We're going to talk about this in a bit. I'm actually, unlike most crypto people, I'm actually a networking person. Like I did my PhD at Northwestern University, and I'm like, networking stuff, Wi-Fi, security, TCP, UDP, like protocol stuff. That's even before being a crypto guy, I am a networking guy. Mm-hmm. And during my PhD, me and my then advisor and now co-founder, Professor Alex Kuzmanovic, we had a project which we kind of like pivoted into doing like networking proof of work because it made sense, like for some project that we did. But after doing that, we kind of started looking deeper into, the network layer of blockchains. And turns out there are no networking people working on blockchains because, crypto is filled with super great cryptographers, but networking people, especially like academia networking people, nobody's doing blockchain. Nowadays, a bit more, but say, look a few years back, nobody was. And I always think that's because, like, if you write something, if you're a networking person in academia, you write a paper and somebody doesn't like it, you get a bad review from the journal or something. But in crypto, if you write something, people would trash you on Reddit and on Twitter, and all of a sudden your life is a nightmare. Well, how come you said Lightning doesn't work or whatnot? So I can see why people from the network domain didn't enter it. So anyway, I kind of we started to doing blockchain stuff. And all of a sudden we realized that we know how to solve the scalability problem because it's actually a networking problem. And so from that point on, deep down the rabbit hole. So I was familiar with crypto, I think since 2013, but I think like most people, I knew of Bitcoin, I knew what it was. I wasn't really it sounded sketchy and scammy, and it took I think I really got deep into it in 2016 or so.
Mm-hmm. Was it Bitcoin that got you interested, or was it Ethereum, or the idea of a smart contract, or what was it more specifically that really?
So before anything else, it was just Bitcoin. I love the idea of Bitcoin. Bitcoin makes tons of sense. I am very frustrated with the direction it's taking. And again, we'll talk about scale a bit, but all the people who thought we can do more on-chain moved away to doing BCH, and everybody who said, oh no, we don't need to do transaction on-chain, we'll just wait for Lightning to come, and that would totally solve all the problems in the universe for sure. So they remained at BTC, and I'm not happy with the direction Bitcoin has taken in the past since 2017 or so. But definitely Bitcoin is super interesting, and it took me a while to move from Bitcoin to I knew there are altcoins I know Litecoin doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of it's like Bitcoin, but a silver to Bitcoin's gold. That argument never really sat with me. But when I got into understanding what Ethereum is, to break down the the world computer, what does that even mean? But this is how it works. This is the thing. Then the potential here, the potential of programmable money is immense. And so that I got today I am very excited about ETH. It's the thing I'm most excited about. But definitely at the beginning, Bitcoin was the thing.
Right. Yeah, Bitcoin was definitely one of the things that got me interested in the space in terms of how it could actually grow and how quickly it grew too, compared to, most assets. It's technically the best performing asset of the past decade, blowing everything else away. It's incredible how much it grew and how much potential it still has, despite all the issues, and how many times it's been forked and how many times the community is split off.
I actually heard something interesting from, I was doing a panel or giving a presentation in Boston before COVID, I think February or something like that. And there were a lot of non-crypto family offices. It was Token Daily have had this seminar for people outside of crypto to understand crypto. And I think it was the CEO of Arca who kind of gave a perspective, think like East Coast old money perspective kind of thing. We don't really care about blockchain and fast, etc. We want like something solid. But I think she said, or one of her analysts said, but I think it was her, said something which really rang well with me. She said like, everybody are talking when our institutionals are going to be ready to accept Bitcoin, but it really is the other way around. Is Bitcoin ready for them to enter? And the answer is no. Like, no big institutional entity can step into the market, because as soon as it puts a tiny fraction of what it has into it, like everything blows up in terms of like, okay, look, moves all the needles. There's not enough liquidity. It doesn't work well enough. So that was interesting for me. My thinking was, they're not well aware enough of Bitcoin and why it makes sense as a safe against like non like deflationary money, blah blah blah, hard money, etc. But the idea is that they can't enter. They manage trillions of dollars. They can't take 10% of a percent and put it in there. It just doesn't work. Like there's no room for them, and that's an interesting problem. I found it to be super interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest issue I see with Bitcoin is there's a parity issue and there's a trade volume issue. Obviously, Bitcoin gets a lot of trade volume, but not compared to, the scale of trade that happens with the dollar every single day or another sovereign currency out there. I mean, if Bitcoin had that much volume every single day consistently, it wouldn't actually fluctuate up and down as much. The movements would be much smaller. It'd be much more stable. I mean, that's why we see huge swings in Bitcoin, sometimes thousands of dollars a day. That's one issue with it. And it'll be solved in time. The other is a parity issue, where being able to use a single Bitcoin for a transaction is getting difficult because of how expensive it becomes when the network goes up. The price is changing all the time. And, there's a lot of people that think that it would be better if people were spending smaller denominations of a Bitcoin, like a Satoshi, on an everyday basis, because it'd be more practical. And for that to happen, you'd need Bitcoin's market cap to be worth like $30 trillion or something like that. Some insane amount. And there's a lot of theories out there to different ways to utilize Bitcoin, but as a technology, it works and it's cool and it's there and it's stable, but it doesn't really function like money. So it's like everyone.
That kind of like goes back into the point I made earlier, but really the Bitcoin, look at the title. Like Bitcoin is like a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. This is not electronic cash. I can't say me giving you $1 bill cost me $0. Okay, if I want to send it over the internet, like, okay, I'm willing to spend a cent, okay, or a fraction of a cent. If Bitcoin is limited, and I hope the same doesn't happen to Ethereum, like if you limit its capacity, it stops functioning as money. Like as soon as you have adoption.
Right.
Pivoting a bit from Bitcoin to Ethereum, I like Ethereum. I like Ethereum a lot. I'm very bullish on it. It's super exciting. But people don't estimate how many the volume of transaction a blockchain need to support in order to be actually used. People say mass adoption. Forget about mass adoption. Let's talk tiny crypto stuff. Okay, if you have a decentralized exchange, right? You want to do programmable money, no single entity controls it. You have a decentralized exchange that has 1,000 traders. Okay, 1,000. Binance has 4 million traders. Okay, so just 1,000, and each one of them doesn't do full-blown algo trading, whatnot, thousands of transactions per. Each one does, a bit of arbitrage, one transaction each second versus other decentralized or whatnot. You have 1,000 traders doing one TPS. That's 1,000 TPS with your tiny, not important DEX. Okay, that needs 1,000 transactions per second. And if they want to do real trading, they need a lot more than one TPS. You need 200, 300, 400,000 transactions per second if you want to actually, make things useful. And so I think the direction Bitcoin went down, saying, oh, this is just hard money. It's hard to move. It's not really useful. It's deflationary. It's censorship resistance, and it's cross-border. But we don't care about, like, it's not programmable money. You can do very little programming with Bitcoin, and it makes no sense to use it because it's not money, which is, I find it like sad. It should be money. You can get all of that and scalability, and you could make it all work. But you have to aim at really high volume of transaction per second, which people misunderstand. They think it's impossible. They think it's super hard. It really isn't that hard or complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of people want Bitcoin to be money. I mean, there's a lot of projects out there like Lightning Network, for example, that do kind of make it possible. And it's a good solution, but it'll take a long time for that to really become big enough and used.
I strongly disagree. Like people say, oh, Lightning solves it as really punted answer. It works, right? No, it doesn't work. Like, can I send you money with Lightning?
Not yet.
How can I? Well, you need to run a node, and I need to run a node, and so we'll make a channel. So if I want to give you money, first of all, I have to have a channel with you to begin with, and then we're going to say, and I'll put $5, and you'll put $5, and so there's be like a channel between us, and you have a channel with somebody else, and I will pay him by I pay you and you pay him. And the complexity around it, the number of things that break and don't really work. People think it's just a matter of time of getting it isn't. There are like inherent things. Some things are completely unsolved. Like, if I want to pay random person X, I even don't know which channels lead me to them. There is no networking. Like, oh, of course I know the path to him. There is no. It's an unsolved problem. Like, nobody ever solved how do you actually reach them. Nobody even really tried and say, like, oh, here's a solution that works. No solution to that. If I already gave you $5, if we have a channel of $5 and $5, I can't pay extra. I have to open another channel. Everything is prepaid. So if I want to get my salary from my company or something like that, then I need to have a channel. I have to put all the money that I will ever earn from the company ahead of that, so they could pass it to me or something like. Saying Lightning works is a way oversimplification of the entire thing. Lightning isn't there. It's like you can't just pay people with Lightning. So sorry, I just had to stop at that point.
No, it's okay. I think that there are some potential use cases for Lightning. Like, let's say Bitcoin became like people accept it as an asset, but not as money. And Bitcoin becomes worth some ridiculous amount of money, and we're all spending Satoshis on a daily basis, which actually might solve some of the issues. Instead of spending an entire Bitcoin on a purchase, you're spending a very small fraction. But you could potentially leverage the Lightning Network to pay a retailer or vendor or something in Bitcoin if those channels are set up properly. There could be some solutions for that in the future, but in my personal opinion, I don't think that's the direction of Bitcoin. I think it just becomes this digital asset, this digital version of gold for the internet, and it's just going to exist, and people are just going to have the ability to invest or not invest. I don't think it's going to serve the purpose as money. There's other projects that are much better at that.
So I think, but there's something which is kind of like in common to all layer 2 solution, and that's true for it. It's true for Lightning. It's true for optimistic rollups or any rollups, or pretty much all the idea of like we'll pay off chain and submit it on chain. They all have a very similar mechanism, right? The idea is that like, okay, we'll make transaction, right? Whether we have a channel or using some other mechanism or something like that. And when the need comes, we can submit it and, settle the situation to everybody's like satisfaction. But the security thing around it, like what if you send me, I don't know, 1 ETH using some layer 2 solution, and then I'm offline and you're going to take that and submit like an older state before you send me that. Okay, so you put something like you submit an older state or something like that. And so the solution, people call it free. If you do that, you can either, I would submit to the right like state, or somebody, I'll pay somebody else like a watchtower or something to submit that. But really it means that if a big entity is compromised and they try to defraud all their users all at the same time, not because they're evil, maybe because they're evil, maybe they're a scam, maybe they just got hacked. Now you have everybody who needs to submit their fraud proofs or truth proofs. But that means that for that to work, you need to have the capacity in layer one to begin with. Think on what happened to, was it Compound? Yeah, Compound in Black Thursday. Right? The idea was that, we have liquidators, right? If an asset goes down, everybody can bid on it. And so they would bid up one another, and you have a mechanism to make sure that an asset is being liquidated and get a fairly decent price on that. However, Black Thursday, everything goes mad. Layer one is completely congested and people can't make bids. So you have this one smart person who paid really, really high gas and bought $4.5 million worth of ETH for, I think, practically nothing. Just like, I'll just take it for free. And he got that, right? He got that because all the others couldn't participate. The blockchain was too congested. You have exactly the same problem with layer two solutions. They only work if, in the worst case scenario, and everybody can move to layer one when the need arises. And so, for the security to be preserved. But if everybody can work on layer one in case of an emergency, why won't everybody just work on layer one to begin with? Now, don't get me wrong, layer two has value. Lightning has value. Whether it's Starkware solution and other, like you get UX benefits like Uniswaps, whatever. You get benefits you can do other things, but not strictly scalability. Because if you just scale on layer two, that means, or let's say differently, you have to scale layer one as well. Layer one must scale for layer two to work. Otherwise, layer two is also broken. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. So is there a similar issue there with Ethereum? With what's going on with these gas prices and the fact that it gets expensive and slows down? Is that a layer one issue?
So yes, it's definitely a layer one issue, but we're actually making great progress in Ethereum layer one, and we're actually working on layer zero, just like the networking layer below that. What's happening right now with the gas fee, there are two things. You have the fees, like the gas prices that people are paying, and you have the gas limit. Gas limit in a block is similar to, in Bitcoin, the block size, like in Bitcoin, how many bytes can enter. In Ethereum, how many instructions, how many gas can be used within a block. And after 2 years of stagnation, that the gas limit was stuck between 2017 and September 2019, that the gas was stuck at 8 million gas. We at bloXroute had been working with pools and miners to solve the scalability problem. We can discuss that in a bit. But generally, miners get to choose how many, like in Bitcoin, the block size is limited to 1 megabyte. So it's kind of like it's stuck at that. In Ethereum, miners actually vote, do we want to increase or decrease the capacity? Now, it sounds silly, like why, let's just increase it. Let's have more room for everybody. Voila, problem solved. That's easy. But turns out that as they increase the capacity, blocks become bigger. When blocks become bigger, if I am a miner or a pool and I created a new block, I need to send it to everybody else. However, the bigger the block, the longer it takes to propagate. And so if I am a miner and I created a block and it's 10 times bigger, it takes 10 times longer to propagate. Now there is a 10 times larger opportunity that's like another miner on the other side of the world. He's honest and everything, but he still didn't hear about my block. So as my block propagates throughout the world, he's still hashing, and voila, he also found a block. So now you have a fork in the blockchain, okay, which will be resolved when the next block is mined. That's okay. But if you increase the gas limit, you make block bigger, they propagate slower, and you increase the chances of forks happen and the uncle rate of of pools and miners. So the reason that pools and miners don't just increase it, oh, let's just have 10x more room for everybody and problem solved, is that they are risking the reward. If I make the block bigger, I might not be rewarded. It might get orphaned, or I'll get a smaller reward. It will be an unco. Mm-hmm. So miners and pools play this game where they're increasing it as long as it doesn't increase their unco rate too much. Okay, so this is like currently you'll see unco rate at around 3%, 4%, 5%, depending on the pool and the miner, and how that kind of where things are. We started working, so we at bloXroute, actually, this is what we do. We handle a lot of that. We built this provably neutral system that we send transactions to everybody, so everybody remains in sync. And that allows miners, when they propagate blocks, to compress them and propagate them faster. So the idea is that you can do much larger blocks, 10x more, 100x more, 1000x more is like not outside, like is within possibility. Mm-hmm. And you could do that and not increase the unco rate. And so in the past 9 months, miners had increased it twice since starting working with us, from 8 to 10 million and from 10 to 12 million gas. So that's a decent increase that we have made in the past 9 months, from 8 to 12 million. Mm-hmm. That's like that's 4 out of 8. No, so that's 50% increase, right? However, we aim much higher than that. But another thing does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
What's going on there? However, even though we increased the gas capacity, the demand of Ethereum is so high that kind of like don't increase it by like 2 million gas. Why can't we increase it by like 5 million gas, 10 million? Can we make double? Can we make 5x more? Can we do more than that? Where's the limit? And we're actually working with the pools and the miners, trying to persuade them, try to do more. Like right now they increased it and the unco rate didn't go up. Things are working nicely. So we hope to continue with that progress. But even though they increase the gas capacity, still there's not room for everybody. So everybody try to outbid one another. So unfortunately, fees are still high at this point.
Right. Is that something that's also part of what slows down Ethereum and kind of creates this network bottleneck effect?
So short answer is yes, right? All the blockchains, mm-hmm. proof of work, this is also true, by the way, for proof of stake and ETH 2.0. Doesn't matter, okay? Mm-hmm. Any blockchain has this idea that somebody, miner, validator, whatnot, committee, federation, whatever, somebody creates a block. That block needs to get to everybody else, so somebody else could add the next block, right? You can't add the next block before you heard the previous one. And if you make the blocks 10 times bigger, whatever you do, they propagate 10 times slower, and so you have to reduce the rate by a factor of 10, and you're kind of like stuck at the same point, mm-hmm. doing 10x larger blocks, 10 times less frequently. And so this is a bottleneck that needs to be solved for Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin, which again, I find it very frustrating. Bitcoin said, we don't care about that. We don't want Bitcoin to be money. We don't want it to be useful. It's not to transact. It's the backbone of money or something like that. Even though you can have both, we're not increasing the capacity. Ethereum pools and miners are way more open to try. Let's see. Let's not think that we know the answer before we did it. They increase the capacity. Oh, seems to be working. We had that 9 months ago. Oh, we increased again. Things continue to increase. Like things work, but it's going, I think, to be an ongoing process. And the Ethereum community is going to be very involved in that, saying like, do we want to try to do more? Or are we happy? I guess nobody is, but are we happy with the current state of things with the higher fees, etc.?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Pivoting from that a little bit to BlockRoute Labs, what do you guys do there primarily, or what's your mission?
So our mission is really scaling all blockchains, right? We are the networking people who solve scalability. This is what we do. Mm-hmm. So we build this system. Like the idea behind our technology is actually quite simple. The problem that needs solving is that blocks take too long to propagate. And side note for a second, mm-hmm. we argued that it's the only bottleneck, and eventually we actually proved it. We took the Bitcoin code, which is like the simplest blockchain, nothing fancy, take it as is, We deployed a Bitcoin network of our own with 300 nodes plus 30 different miners. And we tried to use bloXroute technology to propagate blocks. And we tried to see, can we scale that network? If we just use that, does that allow to do larger blocks and more frequently? So we took that network and we were able to make it process 100 megabyte blocks every minute. So not only did we increase the block size by a factor of 10, we reduced the time by a factor, the blocks that we increased by a factor of 100, we reduced the time by a factor of 10, and we were able to process 3,000 transactions per second at peak. This is that was a great step for us, but more important, it is to show that there is no other bottleneck. It's not the CPU power of your computer. Your personal computer at home can easily process 3,000 transactions per second. And if you have Intel's i9, you can do 20,000 transactions per second, okay? That isn't it. It's not about storage because you don't need to store all the blocks since Genesis if you're that constrained. You just need the state in the last 5 or 10 or 100 blocks or so. Anyway, so we showed that the only bottleneck is how long it takes for blocks to propagate. And so we're called bloXroute because we route blocks. Our technology, what we do really is we have this system, the BDN, the blockchain distribution network, which allows nodes to remain in sync. As transactions happen, you send a transaction, they just think of it as waves going in the network. And the transactions aren't the transactions that I know. And even if our nodes are connected and you tell me of your transactions, by the time I hear of your transactions, you already know other transactions. And so what we do is we synchronize it. I would say, oh, here are new transactions, here are new transactions, here are new transactions every few hundreds of milliseconds. And that allows, when a miner mines a block, and it includes transactions that blocks are propagated, then if I am the miner and I send it to you, I don't actually have to send you the entire block. I can just say, oh, I have a block and it has transaction 1, 5, 17, 105, 47. And if you know exactly the same transaction, you know what I mean. So on the wire, I don't actually have, even if the block is very, very big, I just have to tell you which transaction are there, not send you the actual transaction. So this is a relatively simple trick, right? This isn't like Lightning, channels, Plasma, Rollup, ZK. This is simple. We keep everybody in sync. We help the synchronization, and now we can do larger blocks. It's that simple. So that's what we do. We focus strongly on Ethereum because, honestly, Ethereum feels the pain of the scalability problem more than any else. There are 2 blockchains that feel the pain. BTC and nobody else has such capacity and don't have enough capacity. BTC decided we're not doing it. We're keeping it that. Everybody who believed in large blocks moved to BCH. Bitcoin Cash, really like the people, super nice, very friendly with a lot of them. Their problem is different. They also have that problem, but at this point, they're trying to get traction. They get people to use them. I don't know, with read.cash and all sorts of stuff. So they're focusing on getting demand. That really leaves Ethereum. Ethereum is the only one that loses traction to other projects just because it's so costly to transact on chain. And it's so costly because everybody tried to use it and outbid one another. And so our mission is really scaling all blockchains. We're focusing strongly on ETH. We're getting, again, we got 50% improved. That's great. But that's percentile, right? We're aiming at large multipliers. We know we ran an Ethereum network and we're able to process a few hundreds of transactions per second. So we know we can do more. We actually tested it. We tried it. It worked. So now it's about getting more of the miners and more of the pools to vote to increase the gas limit. We have something like 70% of Ethereum hash power using us on mainnet. So they're using our technology. It's already being used in the wild. Right now, Ethereum blocks are propagating using bloXroute at 100 millisecond all around the world. But now it's becoming a political thing. Okay, do we increase it and by how much? And now you have all the people, oh no, you shouldn't, this is dangerous. And it would have been dangerous if the uncle rate went up, but it didn't went up. So we're safe, so we can continue to. So it's now getting the community to understand the value and the possibility of increasing the capacity.
Gotcha.
That was a really long answer.
Oh, no, that's okay. It was fascinating. The dynamics of that change as Ethereum moves into the Ethereum 2.0 and into staking? Like, does that change how what you guys do for Ethereum?
So POS doesn't change it, sharding does. Okay, so POS in POW, well, you need the block to propagate faster everybody else before somebody else, or if you don't, you'll have forks. In POS, it's cleaner. The idea is that I created the block, I need 2/3 of the people to sign it. If it takes me 10 times longer to get them to sign it, then the time between this block and the next block increased by a factor of 10. So it's very, like, you make the block bigger, it propagates slower, you can't move to doing the next one. So we just remove the ugliness of having forks in the blockchain. But it's exactly the same principle. The idea is that you can't scale it unless you improve the time it takes for blocks to propagate. Sharding, so for ETH 2.0, it works great. So rather than work with miners and pools, we work with validators. Exactly the same idea. We offer for free the technology that allows them to propagate blocks among one another, and voila, scalability. Sharding is different because sharding is, think about it as like that sharded blockchain, just like each shard is a small blockchain and they kind of like interleave in a way that preserves security. Well, in that case, we scale each shard by its own. So if we can do 100 shards and we scale each one by a factor of 100, great. So now you have a 10,000x improvement, right? Because each shard is doing 100x more and you have 100 shards. So sharding plays really nicely with bloXroute, but we can like scale each shard by itself rather than the entire system like as a single unit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I've talked about sharding with a few other people, especially Kadena, had him on the podcast twice. Really interesting concept. Do you think that Ethereum's actually going to get there where they're going to implement sharding, or is it still kind of on the table?
That is a really good question. And I have different perspectives from different people. The idea is that if doing sharding and doing like a lot of the things, like moving to PO, like the entire thing, this isn't a small change. This isn't just like, oh, let's just change. This is like, oh, we're redoing the entire thing. It's like change everything mega gambits. That's like, oh, we're going to redo the entire thing end to end. And that's super hard. So people are making progress on that. So the question is not, unlike Lightning, which I think is broken by design, sharding is like, it works, but it's just very, very hard and very, very complex. And you run into a lot of issues. So it's more a question of timing. So that's true. And you also, so it's not just sharding. You have like the entire ETH 2.0, everything around it changed. These are just major changes and it's like a major new design, which is going to have some, weaknesses and all sorts of stuff. Like at the beginning, it's going to take time to mature, etc. And at the same time, you have like ETH 1.x or ETH 1.0 that does like gradual improvement. We have a working system. Now let's change the way we do the fee. Right now you have ETH 1559, which I really like, which is the idea for, instead of just putting a high fee and everybody competing with one another, you have a base fee that everybody pays the same. So if the blockchain gets congested, everybody have to pay the same amount more, and then people would stop using blah, 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 blah. Long story short, it makes it a lot more efficient and you can easily guess like what's going to be your fee instead of like just sending a transaction and praying. So this iterative process is I wouldn't say it's a lot better, but like oftentimes it will take you much further, much faster. Right? You start with a thing. If you're familiar with like agile development, you start with the basic, then you iterate, then you iterate, then you iterate, then you iterate. So will ETH 2.0 ship at some point? I think so. I just wouldn't put my money on when will it ship. And the question is, from my perspective, I am way more bullish on ETH 1.x, and like that's where I invest my time and effort. Like ETH 2.0 is great, like go for it. But it's going to be very, very hard. And there are numerous things that needs to be solving and just difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like do you feel the same way? Or
it does.
Like, what's your perspective on it?
I do feel the same way. The thing about Ethereum 2.0 is they've been saying it was going to come out for a long time, and it keeps getting delayed. And, despite Ethereum having like a monopoly on the dApp market right now and still being the cool place to go to build, there's some serious competition creeping up for Ethereum. And while competition's great generally, in an early market like this, in my opinion, I think it's something that could really hurt Ethereum if another blockchain can, successfully attract more projects to build on them, and solve these issues before Ethereum does. And part of the problem of having such a big community with Ethereum is a lot less actually gets done, and there's a lot less consensus. And it's funny because blockchain is all about consensus.
I think you're right. Like Ethereum definitely has the network effect, which doesn't come just because it's a cool place to go. Just the amount of tooling. Okay, the idea is that if I want to build something, do I have to reinvent the wheel? Sucks. In that case, I don't want to do this idea. If I have to reinvent, how do I write code and how do I deploy it and how do I up everything? And in Ethereum, you have really strong tools that do exactly that, which most other, the Ethereum killers, etc. I'm not like, I don't think, they're super interesting, but if something is super cool and great, it could be adopted into Ethereum. So it's kind of like go for it. I'm not super worried about that. I think the problem is the high fee. Like, if I am a project and everything to do in Ethereum is super costly and it's prohibitively costly, I can't do it. Like if I want to do something, it just becomes so expensive that it's not worth doing. Then I'll use, I don't know, pick an Ethereum killer and like that. And this is where I feel Ethereum, I'm not afraid of Ethereum losing momentum, kind of like losing, but it's losing momentum and it's a shame. It's a shame because I know we can do better. Okay, we just move. If I told you 9 months ago that we can just increase the capacity by 50% and everything continue to work, you'd be like, is it really true? Is it just talking? Like it might not work. Okay, it took us 9 months. We increased it, like miners finally increased it by 50%. And voila, everything continued to work as is. And I'm telling you right now that Ethereum can handle hundreds of transactions per second right now. It's not limited there. We can do more, but more than that, well, some of the code in Ethereum isn't super optimized. There are some stuff that were like okay at 10 transactions per second, but they have to be rewritten in a better way to do thousands of transactions per second. But I really would like miners and pools to continue increasing the capacity because it works. It's like we have like to be very kind of like I want to be the most like honest and straight person like on the planet. There are 3 risks here that we should monitor. The uncle rate, which I described earlier, blocks at bigger property. That's the one thing that is immediate. There is a second thing, which is about like, what about the state size, right? It's kind of like this, how many smart contracts holding how much information? If we increase that, does that mean that increases the state size and that's an issue? So people are working on that, but there is an immediate solution for that. You could say everything that increases the state now costs 5 times more gas, okay? If you just want to send transaction to somebody, fine, same cost. You know what? Let's cut that in half. Let's make sending regular transaction cost half the gas, not 25,000 gas. Let's cost 10 times. So you could do even more. You can make sure the state size doesn't grow while still increasing the capacity of Ethereum. And the third piece, what was the third piece? Like how long it takes to download the entire Ethereum and validate the entire Ethereum blockchain. But I just saw recently how, the latest Raspberry Pi takes like 2 days and get it all done utilizing its software and whatnot. And like, really? Like, do we really want to limit the capacity of Ethereum and what we can do in order for people to be able to run their own node on a machine that costs $50? Like I'm not sure that's the metric we should be aiming at.
Right.
So anyway, so I'm I would very much like to see Ethereum continue to increase its capacity. I think we have seen we can do it. Why aren't we continuing doing that? And like, okay, let's say that every 3 months we try to increase it a bit and then measure and see if everything works nicely or not, or should we stop?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like my take on it.
Yeah, I think where Ethereum is going to run into an issue if they don't start solving this soon is if, let's say, there's a company that's very well known like Microsoft that wants to build some economic world-changing app on Ethereum, whatever it is.
Which is the case, right? Microsoft want to be the decentralized entity thing on Ethereum, right? That's reality. That's not an if.
Yeah, of course they do. A lot of companies do. And they're all kind of competing and waiting for the right opportunity. But, let's say they build this amazing app on Ethereum, they can't afford to have days where, their app is now not working very well or is slower or more expensive to operate because CryptoKitties had a good day. And now and now you have this huge company with all this money they put into this app that can't perform consistently because this decentralized kitties game is bottlenecking the blockchain. So there's a lot of issues they got to solve. And if there's another blockchain that can do that, if EOS can do that, if Cardano can do that, if something else can do that down the line, I think Ethereum, loses a lot of credibility as a blockchain project.
I think like a year ago, more than a year, like I think it was March 2018. Like I was speaking with Vitalik on this, and we were talking about how like I'm somewhat of a blunt guy, so I told him like, listen, like Ethereum is trying to be like the best citizen out there. They're not just here. We're going to do this. We're going to be great. Okay, so everybody else, because it's expensive, and so in the meanwhile, everybody who's trying to deploy something goes to the other blockchains which aren't that great, and they're not really decentralized. And they have all sorts of issues, but they're cheap. So while Ethereum goes here, everybody else goes there, and that's momentum lost. And it's a shame. Okay, like we can get it all working for Ethereum. And again, kudos to all the bloXroute works for any blockchain out there. I am very like if you can provide and create value which brings value to real people, I am all for it. But Ethereum is really such a hub of so much innovation, it has such a great momentum. It's a shame to see it losing it for not increasing the gas further. If we can, like as long as it's safe, we should continue to increase it. But why did it take 9 months to increase from 10 to 12? We could have done it. If it's safe now, it was also safe 6 months ago. Why didn't we? Okay, so like, can we continue to increase it as long as it's safe? And we can see whether it's safe or not, because we'll see more forks and uncles happening. So we can really easily monitor that. Miners and pools have the incentive to make sure they don't have too many uncles. So I think the Ethereum community should look deeper into understanding its own power. Like, you have the ability to do more. Why don't we?
Yeah, I would agree there. I think that they're not leveraging the situation very well. And I think there's a lot of things they could do better. And for me, it's just as an outsider, seeing that lack of consensus, in an industry that's built on consensus, it's almost funny and sad in some ways to disagree this much and not get enough done. We'll see what happens. This industry is very unpredictable and interesting, and things move very quickly.
I don't feel the same.
In which part?
Lack of consensus in Ethereum right now. Like I feel a few things are, and it's hard to get done in a distributor. Like it's hard to get stuff done. You have like 9 different teams working on their own implementation, and everybody eventually use like the guest node. So it's kind of like all the burden is like 5 people need to save the world every single time, and the rights to complain about it. But it's kind of like, why are you expecting us to do all the work always, all the time, every time you want something? Well, fair point. When funding should be sent that way to hire more people, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel a lot of the people do agree that, we can do more. Like, I don't feel strong disagreement, like, the small blockers, big blockers in between. It's not to those levels at all. I think some people think, oh, this should be money, and some people say, oh, this isn't money. And it's, okay, there is some disagreement, but I don't find it to be like super fundamental. But maybe I'm experiencing it differently than you. I think each of us has like his own, a bit of like crypto bubble, like the people he's interacting with and the people he knows. And it's sometimes like you don't know what's happening outside of it, I guess.
Mm. I mean, I'm not a developer and I don't really build anything on Ethereum, but just from my perspective, which is interesting because I try and help educate people or let people, come onto the podcast and share their opinions and kind of just get it to people, distribute it to people, and kind of learn as I go too. Have cool conversations like this. And, from my perspective, it's, Ethereum's known about these issues for quite a while. And there's a lot of people in the community, a lot of smart people, and they have all these ideas and it's taking such a long time to implement, just one of them. And it just feels like they could be doing it better. Not saying that they don't come to consensus on anything, but it just feels like compared to something more tight knit, like IOHK, for example, or having just a smaller community base, I feel like they're just not moving like they should. But maybe that's just the downside of being decentralized. I don't know.
There's definitely truth to that, and there's something to be said about the decentralization. But from my perspective, and again, this is me, the networking guy. So from coming like networking guy and scalability guy, and looking like this is what I do for a living for quite a few years now, and so think of all the things that people came up with. Oh, what if we do Plasma, and what if we do Raiden, and what if we do ZK rollups? Oh, we don't really need ZK. Let's just do rollups. And now like all of that these are very sophisticated ideas. Oh, we'll have a system that does this and does that and all these kind of things. And those a lot of the times end up not working. We'll reference back to the Lightning, more complicated than those two. So it's kind of like getting that to actually work is just very, very, very difficult. And the pitfalls, you might not be aware of them. Like everything makes sense. They're like, oh, hold on, we have this situation where everything is broken and we didn't realize that we have an issue here. This is why I like ETH 1.0 versus ETH 2.0. The idea is like, oh, we have something, we're going to make a small change to make it slightly better. And when that works, we're going to make another. We're not going to change the entire thing because it ends up being a lot of times, oh, we're going to try, invest money, invest time, invest effort. And then like, you're like, okay, that didn't work out the way we expected. We're going to try something else. And that's okay also. But you should also have this like short loop trying like, okay, take one thing like 1559, which is a proposal that gets like great adoption and people really like it and it makes tons of sense. Like, okay, let's do that. Let's not say, oh, if we do that, we should also do escalator fees and we should also do envelope transactions, throwing a few technical things. But it's kind of like saying, oh, maybe have a few different types of transactions. And so like one of them would be this. Let's change all the way we handle transactions. And one of them is this. And this would allow implementing this easier. Yeah, but now you just change everything and now you're going to have complexities and you don't know how it's going to end up. Do very small things, make them work, and then move to do another small thing, like the iterative thing. People underestimate how important that is. This is why, from my perspective, what we do, like, oh, we make the network faster. Okay, we're not even blockchain people, really. We're networking people. We have stuff going around faster. We compress them like when we send it on the wire, so it goes faster. And honestly, you have no idea, the same way that you have no idea whether AT&T is using copper wires or optic fibers, right? It just, who cares? It just works. So the same way, we're trying to do something very, very simple, because when you try to do complex things, they break. And it's super frustrating. Like I really can relate to what you're saying. It's like, why aren't we moving fast? It seems like everybody else are moving forward and we're not moving as fast. And some of it is because everybody else are making false promises. That's some of it. And like, it's very easy to say, oh, we can do all the things in the world without actually doing them. It also has to do with Ethereum trying to be the best citizen and do things on the best side. But definitely there is a tendency to try to make things complex and cool rather than the small iterative process. That's my engineering perspective on it. I don't know if you think the same or differently.
I don't disagree. I think it's just a perspective type thing from having two different backgrounds and how you look at it. Like I did very well investing in Ethereum years ago, and got in very early, and I've been a part of a lot of different communities and still am on Ethereum, and it's I'm definitely rooting for it to achieve all its goals, but it's frustrating when you're rooting for it and it's not progressing as much as you want it. It's like having a favorite sports team and being a loyal fan, but being
we're from Chicago. Okay, this is like the home of the Cubs. Okay, what we do is rooting for a losing team. This is a century of tradition is to do that. So I know exactly what you mean. But yeah, I can get that, and it's funny because you say all that, and I'm kind of like, well, I have a PhD in computer science. That makes I am a terrible trader, and I did not invest in the right things and all these kind of things. It's kind of like the fact I have one expertise does not make me like expert on other things as well. So like I do think all sorts of people perspective should be weighted in, while at the same time being able to make rapid changes. Like getting stuff done is super important. Not just debating stuff on Twitter isn't productive. One might argue it's counterproductive.
Yeah, I mean, the only good thing about debating it on Twitter is you can have those debates a little bit more publicly and people can see what you're thinking and saying. But I mean, no, it's not very productive. With the space and when it comes to building like the ideal blockchain, I mean, there's, developers that work on building the best functionality for it possible. You have people that are consider themselves economists. They're looking at it from a monetary perspective. Does it make sense in terms of value and how it's going to grow? There's a usability side, as a business or as a company, you want to see how it, can perform under pressure in different scenarios. Maybe if you're a government, you're looking at how it can perform in different situations. So many different perspectives that go into it. And nobody's from all those backgrounds. So no one is the perfect expert in crypto because they all have different viewpoints on, how something should work and where it should go. So that's also.
But I think a lot of the times the cool thing is that most of these things you can just do in a permissioned way, build whatever cool thing you want to do, just utilize it. As long as it doesn't need anything changed to the protocol, the cool thing is that it's permissionless. Anybody can use it for whatever the hell they want. And all sorts of cool stuff that I could never come up with are being used. Like, I like Uniswap mostly because, and I'm not a trader, so DeFi, like I like DeFi a lot. Deep into that because it's related to what we do and the service that we provide. But so it's kind of like there's a kit and its own prices or everything kind of like weights it like the right way. Oh, this is cool. Like I appreciate somebody being able to go and build this thing without having to ask permission from anybody. Oh, I have this cool idea. I can do that. And that could be on any background. If it's a bit like, if it's voxel or is it like NFTs or if it's like DeFi or if it's anything else. When it comes into making the blockchain itself, I think that there is a tendency of leaning towards cryptographers. Like this is like crypto, right? Like cypherpunk is the root of this movement, and it's filled with super great cryptographers. The problem is that when you have a hammer, every problem is a nail. So every time there is a problem, we should solve it with better cryptography. And it's like, no, dude, this is a networking problem. Here's a simple solution that solves it instead of. The cryptographer solution is something like Lightning. Oh, I'll open a channel with you and we'll only do that and it's trustless and you have intermediaries and whatnot. Why would you do all of that if you can just make the internet faster in a simple, and voila, done. It's already working, deployed in the wild compared to it took us forever 18 months more. So
right.
I think when it goes into this, as long as it's not the design of the chain, I think things are okay. I think if we had the scalability and the fees weren't that high, you wouldn't feel the way that you do right now in terms of why are we moving so slowly? This is the pain, which I feel, this is the thing that Ethereum feels and nobody else feels it. Okay. Because it's we're losing something here. We're losing momentum. We could do more, and now we're stuck on these things. And how come it isn't solved by now? So the least I can say is that, like, okay, I'm working hard on solving exactly that, and we're making progress on that. But I can completely relate to that. So everybody can do their own permissionless thing on the different backgrounds and the different domains that they work at. So that kind of make sense?
That does make sense.
That's how I see it.
That's interesting. Good point. I have to get going in just a few minutes, but one last question to wrap it up. Regarding smart contracts and blockchains, do you think that there will be one to rule them all in the end? Or do you think that there will be a diversity of blockchains that all, kind of share a market and compete with each other?
So I had a change of thought in that in the past, let's say 18 months or something like that. I always thought there are going to be multiple blockchains because blockchain or crypto has multiple value propositions, right? You have hard money, deflationary money, uncensorable cross-border kind of thing, which Bitcoin really tried to capture. But Ethereum offers programmable money in a way that Bitcoin can't offer. So you have this idea where it's like, here's another value proposition which can't be captured by the first one. And what about fast, cheap, reliable transactions? Like, is that Bitcoin Cash, or maybe ETH can do that as well? Well, what about anonymous transactions? Okay, I used to think, well, Zcash, Monero, whatnot kind of thing, like one of them would capture, and you'll have 5, 7 different blockchains that kind of capture the different value proposition. Each one's slightly different than the other. However, working in the real world for a while now, I realized that regionality actually plays a giant part. Okay, if you have Ethereum and you have all this thing working for it, but it's very focused, it's very English focused. Okay, so I am very, very certain we're going to see blockchains coming out from China and China, Japan, Korea, Far East in general, and they're going to offer similar value proposition, but they have different communities. Their materials are different. Their style is different. They're just not part of the current Ethereum community, giving Ethereum as an example. Same for Bitcoin, same for any other value proposition. So I think you're going to see Asian blockchains. You're going to see Arab blockchains, okay, and European, South American blockchains. So there are going to be not thousands, or that's my perspective, not hundreds, but maybe tens. Like you're going to have these 3, 4, 5 regional thing, and I think they're going to be cross blockchain stuff, and it's going to be interoperability stuff. But I think you're going to have more than what a lot of people think, just because of that. Because some would grow, and once they exist, they already exist. They get into the real world, and now you have a bunch of them. So I definitely see a multi-chain universe like we're heading to. The question is that I used to think it's going to be 5, 7, and I'm thinking maybe 20, 30. That's how I view it. What do you think?
I think we've kind of gotten to the point where this is proven and makes sense, that, if you can have another blockchain, you will have another blockchain. People are going to continue creating things because everyone has ideas, and that's why there's thousands of them listed on CoinMarketCap. Now, they're not all going to be successful. That's absurd. But, there will probably be a standard subset, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 that are very widely used and popular, and the rest become fairly irrelevant. I think that's a likely future in terms of blockchains.
That makes sense to me.
But that number could be higher, it could be lower, but I think you really see that today in cryptocurrencies. And I think that's a testament to where blockchain is going, in my opinion. If you use them all for different things, if you want to hold a cryptocurrency that holds its value very well, you probably hold Bitcoin. If you want something that's fast and that banks you probably hold Ripple. If you want something that's fast and decentralized, you hold Dash. If you want something with upside potential, you hold Litecoin. If you want something that gives you a degree of privacy and anonymity, you probably hold Zcash and Monero. And all those are very strongly in the top 10, 15, top 20, very popular and are used every single day for transactional purposes. I think the same thing is coming overall for blockchain in terms of what you want to do and build. So I think there will be a wide diversity. I think it's very unlikely that, we'll have one blockchain that kind of rules them all. It's possible, but very unlikely.
I agree. I think it's very unlikely.
Yeah. I think that's a good.
That was fun.
That was fun. I think it's a good place to wrap it up because I do have to get going to some other things. But Uri, thank you for coming on and having this conversation. It was a lot of fun, and I think a lot of people will definitely enjoy it. And I'll have it out. Actually, I'll probably try and have it out tomorrow if I can get to.
Oh, nice! That's very productive and effective of you. Well, it's been fun being here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And thanks. This was super cool.
Yeah, anytime. Let me know if you ever want to come back on. Happy to have you.
Oh, sure. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just
by the way, feel free to reach out for anything, regardless, whatever, anything. Just feel free.
Cool. Sounds good.
If I could be ever helpful. Have a good one, man. Thanks
Absolutely.
for having me.
Have a good day. Bye.